Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a mock test from Ashfield Driving Test Centre. As we start, we're coming down the driveway leaving the test centre and the pupil is going to be turning left at the end. Now I say to all of my pupils, you must keep the car nice and straight towards the end and get as far up to that giveaway line as you can. Otherwise you're going to have real difficulty seeing what's coming from the right hand side. If you lean to either side as well, you're going to be cutting over those lines, so keep it nice and straight all the way to the end. Now when you turn out of here to the left, there is a 50-mile-an-hour sign and then a big direction board telling you where to go at the traffic lights. So we're going to be turning left here towards Derby. You can see the pupil lining up in the left-hand lane there. Mirrors and signal are done in good time as well, and just a nice steady pace up to that junction ready for the turn. Even though it's 50 miles an hour, you don't want to be rushing up to those traffic lights. You want to balance your speed ready for the turn. And as you can see there, straight into the left-hand lane. I want to see the right mirror covered here too. The pupil did a really good job of that because, of course, that other lane merges in. If you get someone who comes out behind you and they try to get around you, you want to keep an eye on that mirror to make sure you're safe, because they're going to want to come straight back in front of you. And once you know you're safe, get yourself up to speed, of course, aiming for about 45-50 mile an hour along here, as long as the road allows you to do so. If there's traffic in front, of course, just match your pace to them, keeping a good following distance. Up ahead, you can see the crossroad coming up. We're going to be taking a left turn, and this is going to bring the learner into a filter lane where the lights are separate from the main road going ahead. So you want to make sure you get your mirrors covered, you're signaling before you enter that lane, that you bring the car in good time as well. Keep an eye on those lights at the end. Filter lights sometimes will change while the main light for the road ahead doesn't change. So you want to keep an eye on the lights that apply to you. In this case, on this one, it's pretty obvious which lights apply to you. And when those lights come on, that green filter arrow is just confirming that you've got to go to the left out of that junction. Straight into a 30 zone, so be mindful of those speed changes. They normally come up just before or just after a junction, and if you miss them and you end up speeding, you are going to get a serious fault on your test. So clues to look for: in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, you've got buildings around you, you've got street lights, and you've got no reminders about the speed limit. So any reminders will tell you whether it's 20 or 40 in these areas. And in the higher speed limits, it's going to be national speed limit if there's no reminders. And anything different, there should be frequent reminders of that speed limit. Just up ahead, we have a railway crossing. Treat these as you would a traffic light. Just be ready for them to change. And if you are able to stop, then you absolutely should. If you have a queue going across it, make sure you don't stop on the crossing too. Going straight at the mini roundabout, you can see the pupil keeping nice and tight to that left-hand lane, which is absolutely perfect. Just remember to check for the right. It's quite poor visibility there, so you want to make sure you're looking for anyone coming down the road towards that mini roundabout, because of course cars from the right have priority over you there. Now up ahead you can see some traffic. There were some roadworks going on when this mock test was done, so I'm going to skip through some of this rather than you just sat staring at the back of a car awkwardly waiting for me to speak about something, because there's not a lot to say when you sat in traffic. Just keep your mirrors covered, watch for bikes approaching from behind, keep a good following space behind the vehicle in front, and keep moving when the traffic moves up. Notice we've got a national speed limit sign up ahead as well, so be aware that when you turn from this junction, you'll be in a 60-mile-an-hour road. Unless it's a dual carriageway, then it will be 70. So really important to watch out for those speed changes as you approach junctions. Now the pupil's leaving not too bad a space behind the vehicle in front. I'd like to see a little bit more room in order that we could see under the vehicle when we're queuing. We couldn't, the camera only just can, and that's mounted higher up. So just leave a little bit of room so you can see a little bit of road between you and the vehicle in front. That way you're not going to miss out on any road markings. And if anything happens, like that vehicle rolls back or you roll forward, then you've got space to correct the error. As we enter the new road, you can see the vehicles waiting for the lights to change coming towards us. We've then got loads of signs here telling us there's a junction coming up. We're going to be turning right, and it's a mini roundabout. So again, with these mini roundabouts, you want to approach slow enough to see the traffic from the right. And if it's clear, of course, you want to keep some momentum to keep the wheels turning. Don't stop unless you need to. Where you've got queues, you haven't really got much choice. So the pupil's doing a great job here. But as things move, just want to see a clear gap and keep those wheels turning. Round we go, and straight back into another 60-mile-an-hour road. Now, if you skip back, you'll see the 30-mile-an-hour sign just before the roundabout. So like I say, you've got to really watch out for those speed changes when you're approaching junctions, when you leave junctions, and even just traveling down a road like this, you can still come across speed changes as the road changes or the environment around the road. So do keep your eyes moving for those. And as I said earlier, look out for those reminders. If you're not in a 30 or national speed limit road, you should have reminders quite frequently along that road. Notice the pupil slip into the left-hand lane there. Again, mirrors a signal done before entering that lane, ready for that left turn at the lights. Another skip. We sat at these lights for a good minute and a half because it's quite a big junction. You can sit there for quite a while. It can feel a little awkward if you're next to the examiner on your test and there's just silence. You've just got to focus on you and your driving. You've only got to sit by that examiner once if you do it well, and you don't want to let that quiet moment get in your head. Use it instead to reset your mind, to focus on what's next, and to leave everything you've done behind, because sometimes we can make mistakes and overthink them, and then we convince ourselves that we've failed, or we distract ourselves from whatever's going on next. Notice the pupil's taking up the right-hand lane here. However, the left-hand lane also says we can go right. So ideally, that's where I'd want to see a pupil approaching this junction. However, you won't get a fault for doing this as long as it works and it's safe and you're using your mirrors when you come back into that left lane after the junction. The pupil does a really good job of that. We've got this HGV next to us. It's a lot slower to accelerate, so the pupil's clearly ahead of it, checks his mirrors, signals, and brings the car in nice and safely. So there's no fault for doing that. However, the left lane would make that simpler and it would make it safer as a new driver. Up ahead, you can see the sign for Mansfield to the right. Again, we're going to be turning right, so mirrors and signals. See the pupil's taken the wrong position for this one and starts crossing the lanes. Now, because the mirror use was good and the signaling was good and it was safe to do that, I'm only going to record a driver fault. If the mirror use wasn't very good or there were cars nearby, then it would be a serious fault. And in a situation where there are cars nearby, my advice would be stick the lane you're in and just go straight. Taking this corner, you can see the pupil does cut the corner slightly. The markings are really faded and it doesn't cause an issue, so I'm not going to give a fault for that. However, if you cut those corners and it does cause a problem, you will be marked for it. Straight away, you can see the bus at the bus stop. He has got his right signal on, but because of the green light ahead, the pupil makes a decision to move out and overtake. Unfortunately, the lights change red and he gets stuck out in lane 2. Again, this is not going to be a problem as long as he deals with it safely when he moves on. So, moving away, he gets himself ahead of the bus, checks the mirrors, signals, and brings himself in nice and gently. And as I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong in doing that, so long as the mirrors are covered and you're safe when you move in and you're telling people what you're doing. Brilliant. Another satellites, and again, I can't stress enough, you must keep those mirrors covered for cyclists and motorbikes, which may filter between the rows of cars. When it's safe, of course, moving off with the traffic, keep yourself aware of what's going on around you too for vehicles that may come out of the side roads. And that's particularly true here because we're right by a hospital, so you may get ambulances coming in and out with their blue lights on. You should hear them coming, of course, but just keep your eyes moving because you just don't know. As we're coming down roads like this where there's more than one lane, using your mirrors is absolutely essential, because just like you see there with that car overtaking us at quite a bit of speed, if things are coming up behind you quickly and you don't see it, and you come across a parked vehicle or a bus and that leads to you having to change position, you need to know what's coming up behind you. And as that car demonstrates, not everybody's doing the speed limit. Even though they may be speeding, you are responsible for changing lanes safely. So that is entirely on you. You've got to cover your mirrors. You've got to make sure you're safe if you do need to move around. Notice the yellow sign and then the green direction sign here. My Sat Nav has instructed the pupil to take a left turn up ahead. Now on those signs there is no left turn. So the Sat Nav is clearly not referring to this set of traffic lights, but the next one along. If you signal for it, misinterpreting that information, then you may get faulted, and my pupil does just that. He puts his left signal on, then realizes actually it's not here and cancels it. So I'm going to record a driver fault for that. There is a little bit of hesitation at the traffic lights too. If you look ahead at the queue, the pupil was just weighing up whether he could actually cross the junction without having to stop in the middle of it. That's absolutely fine. We don't want to be blocking those junctions. Even if you're only there for a few seconds, you still could cause an obstruction. And unless you can guarantee getting out the other side of that junction, you should not go into it. So this set of lights ahead is where we're turning left. You can see the direction sign up the top there for Skegby. And then, of course, the filter lane bringing us off down the left-hand side where the person is crossing the road. Now, pupil does a really nice job here of positioning the car in that filter lane. He assesses the car on the right there to make sure he's got space. If that's a longer vehicle or it's sat further back, it might be a bit of a squeeze, and it's just not worth risking it if you're not sure about that space. Always make sure you've got plenty of room when you're going through a gap like that. Just up ahead, we're going to be taking the second road on the left. This being the first one. The second one's where that silver car is coming out. You've got to take this quite slowly because it's hard to see in because of the hedges, and it's also quite a steep turn. So take your time. The pupil does a really nice job here down to 8 miles an hour, and that gives him plenty of thinking time when it comes to going around the parked cars as he enters the new road. We're then bending round to the right here. I'm not fussed if a pupil signals here. The Sat Nav does say it's a right turn. Examiners may say it's a right turn, but because the road ahead there is clearly just a parking area, I don't think that it's relevant to signal. We're going to pull up here to do an angle start. You'll be asked to pull over several times when you're doing your test. One of them will involve pulling up to the back of a car like this. The examiner will ask you to leave a car length of space so you can get out again. My advice when you're doing this is check your blind spot, and as you start sticking your nose out round that parked car, check it again. And always be mindful of the oncoming cars. It can be so easy to get so focused on what's coming up behind you that you forget to look ahead. And I've had it where a learner coming the other way has done that to one of my learners, and we've had to react quickly to them. Unfortunately, that one was on test, and the other learner would definitely fail for that. So when you pull out around parked cars, make sure you're paying attention to the oncoming traffic as well. Just up ahead, the road bends round to the right, and my Sat Nav has given the direction to turn right. Now, I would expect that a pupil should see those markings and be able to follow round without any prompt from the examiner there, or from myself in this case. And that falls into one of the first instructions the examiner will give you on your test. When they set you off from the test centre, they will say to you to follow the road ahead unless told to do otherwise, and pay attention to signs and markings so you can follow that road. If you don't pay attention to the road signs and markings, you won't know where it's going, and you'll end up going, getting yourself confused or going the wrong way on junctions like that, or bends like that even. At the top of the road, we're going to take a left turn, quite an awkward angle coming up here. You can see the fencing on the right there makes it hard to see. So it is definitely a slow approach, and the pupil does a really nice line up for that one, getting himself right up to the giveaway line so we can see the most out of that junction. Along this stretch of road is a very common place I'm finding for learners to look at the Sat Nav and rely on that for their speed information rather than looking at signs or the lack of signs. Now, like I said earlier, if you're in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, you'll normally have clues like there's buildings around the street lights. There's even a bright red sign on this one saying new 30-mile-an-hour limit in force. However, there's no 30-mile-an-hour limit signs. As a result, I find a number of my pupils do creep up to 40 after a short while, thinking it's a faster road because the road gives that feeling. But you've got to look out for the signs and that information to confirm. If it were a 40 zone, you would have 40 signs regularly along it. Notice the pupil's past the 30-mile-an-hour mark now. He's doing 35, and I've had to tell him it is a 30 zone. So that's got to go down as a serious fault, unfortunately. If you creep over the limit and correct it by less than a few miles an hour, say up to 5, then the examiners may let it off as a driver fault. However, because I've had to say something, it must go down as a serious fault on this occasion. Up ahead, we've got a queue of traffic leading up to a set of traffic lights, and we're going to be turning left at these lights. Again, the pupil keeps a really nice space there. He's keeping that driveway on the left clear before he can move over. And up to the lights, I want to see again good mirror use, reasonably timed signal, so it's not too soon, but it's also not too late for people to know what you're doing. And then, of course, good positioning as we come up to the turn. It's really, really common as well, I find, that people doing left turns will lean to the right before they make that turn. You want to make sure that you're not doing that. Keep an eye on your steering as you come up to that turn, and make sure you bring the nose of the car into your turn and don't swing out before the turn. If you do swing out, it creates a really high risk for vehicles alongside you. If you look at how close this neighbouring lane is, and of course assume the speed of 30 miles an hour down here, if you're slowing down to turn and you lean out, you could have a vehicle coming past you at that moment, and on your test, that is going to cost you. Now, this pupil does a really nice job keeping the nose of the car nice and tight to the left turn. As we make the turn, you'll see up ahead the national speed limit sign and the arrows telling vehicles to merge in. So again, cover that right mirror and get your foot down to get that speed up if it's safe to do so. With a nice clear road ahead like this, I'd expect the pupil to get up to 50 miles an hour fairly quickly. We have got some warnings about traffic lights, the lanes open out, and of course mirror use is really important again, and then down to 40. Even though it's a short stretch, we can safely get up to 50. Just make sure you come back down to 40 in good time and avoid any driver faults by staying over 40, even if it's only by a few miles an hour. You might be thinking that the pupil is in the wrong lane here, and you'd be correct if they were going straight ahead. However, we are going to be turning right, so pupils took up position nice and early, which means even if he gets caught up in some build-up of traffic near that junction, he's already lined up to make the turn. Sometimes when you've got junctions like this, examiners will even say, to help with your planning, you're going to be turning right in so much distance, half a mile, 800 yards, whatever they say. The examiners then expect you to be in that position in good time, ready for that turn. So the pupil's done a really nice job there planning for the approach to this junction. Coming around, you can see those arrows telling everyone to merge back into the left lane, the warning about the bend, and of course more traffic lights up ahead. This again is going to spread out into 2 lanes. You can see the arrows nice and clearly marked there, so we're going straight ahead at the lights. And up ahead you can see that speed change again back into a 30 mile an hour zone, where I'm going to ask my pupil to pull up on the left at a safe place. He doesn't do too bad a job of this. I'd like to see a smoother path pulling over rather than such a sharp angle, especially if you've got cars behind you. You don't want to slow down and pull in like that. You want to make it nice and swept. What I also want to see every single time that a pupil moves off is a proper blind spot check, and over the right shoulder check to make sure that you're safe before moving out. The pupil was a little bit sloppy on that one, unfortunately, so it's got to go as a driver fault on this occasion. Up ahead, I'm going to get my pupil to pull over again. Because of the blind spot fault, I'm going to use another opportunity to see if it's a one-off fault or if the pupil is going to recur that fault. The angle pulling in again is a little bit awkward, but it doesn't cause an issue, so I'm not going to record that. And when he's moving away, the pupil does remember his blind spot on this occasion. If you repeatedly miss your blind spot, it will go down as a serious habitual fault. So it is really important to make sure you keep an eye on those shoulders when you're moving away. That right shoulder when you pull off from the left side. And if you end up doing the right reverse maneuver, check your left shoulder and double check it when you come across that road to rejoin your lane. Something that stands out to me on this road as well is the bus on the other side. I've had issues with people running for buses where they just seem to forget there's a road as they run across it. Be really, really aware of pedestrians when there's buses pulled up, because sometimes they're so focused on getting to that bus that they forget to check if there's cars come in. Up ahead, we've got a set of traffic lights and we're going to be bearing to the left. Now, the markings say turn left. However, I would advise not to signal here because there is a side road on the left-hand side there, which we do not want to take. Be very careful about how you signal that it doesn't mislead anybody, because if people don't know where you're going, then it makes it more challenging for them to plan around your actions. So using a left signal here would create the impression you're turning into that side road, and cars may try and get around you as a result of that, so really mindful of that. We are going to take this next side road, however, and as you can see, it's very hard to see into it. It's very tight as well, so the pupil's brought his speed right down, and that is absolutely spot on. There really isn't much room in this road to meet oncoming cars, so we don't want to come into that any faster than this pupil did here. He hit about 5 miles an hour as he got to that corner, and that allowed him plenty of time to look up and see a safe space. I've asked my pupil to pull up alongside this car and do a parallel park. Now, normally the examiners will pull you over and explain that they want you to do a parallel park, and then they'll get you to do it. During this maneuver, the pupil's observations could have been better. I want to see more shoulder checks and more frequent all round the car checks. If you're not looking around frequently, then it is going to be a problem. The pupil also moved the car forward. This could go down as a driver fault if it's to make a correction on the maneuver itself. Because the pupil had done the maneuver absolutely fine and then just moved forward a bit, I'm not going to mark that as a fault because it wasn't a correction to the maneuver being misaligned or anything. So just the observation fault on that. Lots of shoulder checks, take your time, and frequently look all around the car. Avoid getting fixed on either side of it. This set of junctions here catches a few people out. We can see the giveaway line and how faded it is, and the road ahead is very inviting if you don't spot those markings. I have had a pupil who failed to respond to those markings in time and came across the junction too quickly, and as a result he got a serious fault. That is something you want to be really careful of. So there's 3 in a row on this one. Notice the pupil waiting for the oncoming car there, and the oncoming car waiting for him. This is one of those 50-50 situations. I think the pupil did a good job deciding to wait, and because the other car didn't move, he then decided to go. I think that's absolutely fine because the other car could have carried on through equally. Neither had priority. Third crossroad with those giveaway lines. Again, you can see the hedges make it really, really difficult to see what's coming. So this pupil's coming right down to a pause and then crossing over nice and slowly. As you go over, you can see the car coming towards us and how slow the pupil's moving in. And that, of course, allows plenty of time for the other car to move out the way, and then that frees up the road for my learner to make his way through. So this demonstrates really good planning, in my opinion. He's adapting his speed and making sure the other car has plenty of time to get round him, rather than just ploughing through and having to slam the brakes on hard at the end. He's really thinking about what he's doing here. Taking a left turn here and then a right at the end, and that's going to bring us straight back towards the test centre to bring an end to this mock test. So coming up to the end, you can see the right's quite a poor view, and it's really important to make sure you're slowly approaching that and giving yourself plenty of time to see what's coming before you cross that give-way line. Remember, a give-way line means you are legally required to let other traffic pass before you enter their road. So if you fly over that without effective observations, you're going to be resitting your test in about 4 months' time, and nobody wants to be doing that, of course. Up ahead, we've got a few parked cars and an oncoming car. Again, stuff like this, it's a case of managing the space you've got and the speed that you're coming into those gaps. If you feel that that gap is plenty big enough for your car, keep it moving. If not, take your time and wait till you're closer to judge it. Notice the 20 there for the school zone. This is an advisory, not a compulsory limit, because it's not in a red circle. It must be in a red circle to be legal. If it's a white circle like that, it's advice. But normally that advice is something worth following. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of people ahead moving around using that crossing. If you come around there too quickly, you're going to end up having to react pretty sharply to how busy that situation is. So it's always worth paying attention to the advice. And even if you think it looks absolutely fine to fly around that corner at 30, be mindful that advice is there for a reason, and the examiners will expect you to ease off and pay attention to it. Up ahead, we've just got a set of traffic lights to go straight ahead at. You should use the left lane ideally. However, if you use the right lane, it's not a problem as long as you're watching your left side and merging back in after the junction. We'll then be turning right back into the test centre driveway, and that brings this mock test to an end. So that gives this pupil a result of 5 driver faults and unfortunately 1 serious fault for his speed. Not too bad a result overall, but it is still not a pass, unfortunately. Remember, to pass, you're allowed 15 driver faults maximum, no serious and no dangerous faults when you take your test. Hopefully this video has been useful for you in preparing for your own test. If it has, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll keep more of these coming. Thank you again for watching, and God bless.